It's been a while.
So Despicable Me 4 just dropped, and I have zero interest in watching it, so I'm not going to. Yeah, to be honest, these movies have just been blunder after blunder for almost an entire decade, Jesus. Especially that last Minions movie. I mean, people went out in suits for this movie like it was some big event, and it ended up being mid! The only one of these movies I can call like a pretty decent film is the first one, and I also have a soft spot for the second one. And you can't say, oh, it's because they're kids' movies, they're not supposed to be masterpieces. But nah, Puss in Boots 2 is a kids' movie, and that's legitimately one of the best movies to come out in the last decade. So there's zero excuse for these movies to suck this much. So yeah, clearly I'm not a big fan of this franchise, but I gotta admit, the soundtracks have always been fire, and that's because they've always been handled by Pharrell, one of the most influential and creative producers out there, who also happens to be one of my favorite musicians, right alongside these guys. So yeah, the soundtracks have always been pretty fire because of this, well, besides the Minions movies, because Pharrell had nothing to do with those soundtracks for whatever reason. But ever since the first movie, Pharrell has been absolutely cooking in the music making department, so I wanted to take a little look at the songs he made for these movies since, you know, the new one came out. This soundtrack is nothing but classics, and each song fits the scene that it's in perfectly. This also seems to be the most engrossed in the story the lyrics to the songs are throughout the series, since Pharrell is actually singing about the events that are going on in the movie, which can't really be said about the other films. But nah, this soundtrack goes hard to this very day. The theme song that opens the movie is great. Fun, Fun, Fun is the perfect summer anthem for this age demographic. Prettiest Girls is probably my favorite song on the soundtrack, to be honest. And there are also some songs that don't actually appear in the movie, so I have no idea why they're even on the soundtrack, but they've gone generally unnoticed despite being pretty good songs. There's Minion Mambo, which is a really stupid song, and I hate to admit that it really goes hard. It also has Lupe Fiasco on it, which is definitely a surprise. And also a song called Rocket's Theme, which is a sweet little piano ballad dedicated to Pharrell's son, so that's pretty sick. So yeah, first movie soundtrack, full of certified hood classics, untouchable, plus this is the only movie where it seems like actual effort was put into it, so it's overall a good experience. So Pharrell only made 2 new songs for this movie, and the rest were just reused from the first one. These 2 songs being Just a Cloud Away and Happy. Now obviously, Happy became a humongous hit when it came out, and played non-stop on the radio, and it's basically the main thing that post-2000s Pharrell is known for, which is unfortunate because this song is just, I mean, it's a song. I don't dislike it by any means, but it was severely overplayed, and that may affect my overall opinion on it. Still, not a bad song, and it's clear to see why it became such a big hit. I mean, it is really catchy, but Pharrell does have way better songs than this in his catalog, so I wouldn't really say this represents what he's really capable of as a producer and songwriter. Plus, there's already an NERD song called Happy, which came out like 5 years before this, so I don't know why he wrote 2 songs with the same name. Plus, the NERD one is way better than the Pharrell one, but like a long shot. Just a Cloud Away is definitely a superior song of the 2. It gives off a very 1970s soul vibe that I appreciate, and just a really nice sounding song despite only being used for like 5 seconds in the movie. Despicable Me 2, honestly, it's lacking in the soundtrack department in terms of original songs, but what we do have is pretty solid. This movie is bad. This is not a good movie. I mean, it's not like horrible, but there's literally nothing about it that makes it good. When it came out, I was 11 years old, so I was still very much in the target demographic of the movie. And even at that age, I still thought it was absolute donkey doo-doo, and I never rewatched it. This movie just, nothing about it that's special. But with that being said, the soundtrack is once again really fire. There's a lot more original songs on this one, which is definitely appreciated, and the sound of these tracks are really reminiscent of the sounds that will be explored on the NERD album that will come out later that year. The lyrics of these songs have absolutely nothing to do with what's going on in the movie, and that's probably because there's literally nothing going on in this movie. Like, the second one isn't a masterpiece or anything, but like, at least it has a tangible plot. Like, at least things happen in that movie. I cannot say that about this one, but back to the soundtrack. Yellow Light, Do It, and There's Something Special are all really catchy and creative songs that I legitimately think work really well when they stand on their own outside of the movie. Chuck Berry goes absolutely crazy for no reason and is like a legitimate banger that I would listen to unironically. And there's also Hug Me, which features Trey Parker, who also voices the villain in the movie, which means that Randy Marsh is canon in the Despicable Me verse. All of these songs go pretty hard, but my favorite has to be Yellow Light. It's just a really catchy and fun song. So I wasn't that all excited for this movie when it first got announced, because honestly I just don't care about this franchise or anything else Illumination makes, but I was excited to hear the soundtrack because I knew Pharrell would be behind it. But apparently, he only made one new song for this movie, and the rest of the songs were by other people like Lil Yachty and Tito Touchdown, which is cool, I guess, but you can't replace the GOAT of Despicable Me, bro. I heard the movie was really bad as well, and that's probably because you got rid of the dude who was carrying the whole damn franchise! Nah, but the one song he did make for this movie is actually really good, and I listened to it more times than I like to admit. It's called Double Life, and it actually seems to be about the plot of the movie this time, and the lyrics make it sound a lot more interesting than it probably is. Pharrell legitimately went off on this track though, and ended up getting a lot of success on TikTok because of how unnecessarily hard he went. There are also people who think this might be a sneak diss at Drake, and in my opinion, like, no. I don't think that at all. I mean, I guess if you read between the lines, some of the lyrics could be read as about him, but I'm almost certain that's a coincidence. He wouldn't put a Drake diss in a Despicable Me movie. Get real. But nah, really fire song. It's a shame he only made one for this movie, but maybe he watched it and it was really bad. He decided, nah, you're only getting one this time. But still, I'm glad we have it. It's actually a really good song. So I have now covered all the Despicable Me soundtracks, and honestly, it's a toss-up between the first one and the third one as my favorites. They're all pretty good though. Anyway, that's enough out of me. Goodbye.